So, we're still working in the 4th chapter of the Synthesis of Yoga, and the introductory section, this chapter on the systems of yoga. And with a bit of good fortune, perhaps we'll finish it this evening. Sri Aurobindo, in the last pages that we were looking at, was contrasting the aims of Hatha Yoga and Raja Yoga vis-a-vis the context of a triple path which would combine knowledge, devotion, and works, and was remarking that the triple path is commonly engaged, the Trimarga, even though it enjoins work which is consecrated to spiritual practice, that it is nevertheless indifferent to bodily and other worldly perfection. More, when a person takes up the triple path, usually instead of using one aspect of it, whether it be devotion or knowledge or works, it becomes exclusive and the other two are let go. He is, of course, referring to the Bhagavad Gita when he describes the triple path, because we have no other instance of it in the history of yogic practice in India, where the three are brought together until we reach the age of the Tantra. So let's talk a little bit about the Bhagavad Gita before we go on and finish the chapter tonight. The Gita obviously has a focus. Vishnu, in his many manifestations, is one of the central themes in the Gita. But Vishnu makes his first appearance, obviously not in the Gita, but in the Rig Veda, where he's a deity of the solar variety, related to the sun of truth, and particularly works in association with the god Indra, who's the god of the divine mind, the lightning flash that illuminates, the sun that radiates. Vishnu is from a word that would mean something like to enter into, to pervade, and thus becomes a universal reality. Also, he's associated in the Rig Veda with the three strides, the three steps, which are later in Puranic mythology typified as those three which overcome the work of the asuras, the anti-divine forces here, and exalt with their demonstration the soaring spirit who claims the earth, claims the mid-regions, claims the heavens. So, in other words, an all-encompassing spiritual presence, a reality that cannot be brooked. It's dynamic. It grows from stage to stage. So apart from Veda and Purana, of course, we have great stories about Vishnu, who is typified either as a dark blue youth, as the great creative God who sleeps on the serpent Ananta, he who is endless, and rising from his sleep through a creator God, manifests the cosmos, which must be an extension of his own divinity in some sense. So his reality again pervades all that comes into being. And the third, of course, the god Vishnu dwells forever in a heavenly abode that they call Vaikuntha. He manifests 10 times on the earth at least, 10 the number of perfection, starting with who manifests in the form of a fish, all the way up to the coming manifestation where he will lead humanity forward to its ultimate victorious conclusion. We know him as Vasudeva. We know him as Krishna. We know him as Narayana. All these three divinities are brought together in the rich mythology and the storytelling of India, fusing with each other. But when we come to Krishna, who is pivotal in the Bhagavad Gita, there he represents more or less the Vasudeva and Krishna conjunction. Krishna is a deity of the Yadava clan. He makes his first appearance to us in the Chandogya Upanishad. Clearly, he appears as one who, simply upon hearing the word from his teacher, becomes realized, becomes awake to the all-encompassing reality of the divine. Later, of course, he figures prominently in the Mahabharata and signally in the Bhagavad Gita. He is the one who turns the key to unveil the whole inner story of what this gigantic struggle is about. The other stories about Krishna, the Krishna Gopala conjunction where Vrindavana is the central motif, that occurs somewhat later. And around the 4th century CE, we start getting the conjunction of that story presented to us. But the Gita goes back as far as probably the 2nd century BCE and arises inside the story of the Mahabharata, the great story of India. Some scholars feel that it is imposed from outside. I don't agree. I think it is the very means by which the challenges of dharma, the question of karma, what it means to have a spiritual life, comes into focus and is all the heart of the land. It is the Sanatana Dharma. Now, Krishna in the Gita says this is a teaching as of old, which I'm revealing to you again, Arjuna. I'm presuming that everybody knows the background of the Gita, and I don't have to go back and repeat the context. The battlefield at Kurukshetra and why all of these people have arrived there at this scene. The 5 Pandavas, figures of light, surrounded, confronted by 100 figures of darkness. Those few good souls, always outnumbered, and yet somehow victorious. Yes, victorious. Let's not go into all of that, but the Gita, in its central quest, is here to awaken us to the timeless truth which is at the heart of our being, remembering what we are there, to act in the world, to consecrate our actions to the divine, living in communion with the divine and giving up egoism, giving up claim to the fruit of our work. We come into active unity with the divine will. We come to know the divine through that conjunction of being, one thing meeting another and becoming one. Our communion with that spiritual reality is all important. But our communion with that leads us to know it deeply. Not simply to escape the dualities of the world, but to come into oneness with it. And what is that being? Is it simply a static reality? Something that is absolute, immutable in time, and we are lost in mutability here? And the Gita says, no, it isn't quite as simple as that. Krishna is saying, from my own being, I manifest the Brahman. I manifest the Absolute as the ground of my conscious being through which I extend into the world. And I have a supreme nature, not simply the external nature that you deal with here in your dualities, but I invite you to come and find out what I am above. Because that is where you were really born. Your jiva, the truth of your soul, comes from that. And as you stand here in existence, I stand in you, looking out through you. You are unique, but unique in my being. All this world, I am the center of. Whatever you look at, I am there. Don't be perplexed. Living in me, you will find the truth in your consciousness. You will find the perfect love in your heart, and you will act flawlessly through the world. And all of it is oneness, keyed to the experience of one single reality, undivided but distributed in numerous forms. Can you count them all? Can you, when you regard the universe, see that same face everywhere? This brings us back to Sri Aurobindo, who had that experience in the Alipur jail and saw, visibly, palpably, that same divinity, Vasudeva, figured in the wall, in the judge, in his fellow prisoners, in the ants that bit his legs. Wherever he cast his vision, he saw only that. It is a wonderful vision, more fulfilling even than the release from subjection to the ego and absorption into Brahman. That was his first yogic victory. The second, finding the divine, demonstrably, dutifully dedicated to world action, was a greater discovery. And so when he came back to the Upanishads, when he came back to the Gita, he found resonance in each of them, that they are indeed world-affirming. They do not pull you away from the world. And so the Gita was particularly important because the Gita does not let you escape. It brings you back and back. It helps you find liberation from ego. It helps you find disidentification with elements of ignorance. But once you know what you are still enjoined to come back and work, to give, to delight. Brahmarpanam Brahmahavi, and that whole shloka. The divine is the act of offering. The divine is the substance that is offered. The divine is the fire into which the offering is poured. The divine is the one who offers. The divine is the destination of one who works in communion with the divine. And it should resonate in you, in your mind, in your heart, in your body's actions. That's why people recite that shloka before they eat, because the food is itself an act of offering. It is a sacrament. It calls you to lift yourself up, to offer your energies above, and then to receive them back, consciously then absorbing them in your being and manifesting them in the life and the environment around. This is the work. Live in communion with the divine. Express that joy, express that truth. Act truly. So the Gita is the very document that we go to when we want to talk about the triple path. The path of knowledge, the path of love, the path of works. We'll have more to say about other dynamic approaches to yoga, but I think we can go ahead and read the balance of this chapter. The path of knowledge aims at the realization of the unique and supreme self. Now he's going to use this term unique at least 3 times over the next couple of pages, so we may as well remind ourselves of what it means. It means alone, sole, without a like. So this self is unique in that there is no other by comparison with it, which is an affirmation of a truth recognized in Vedanta. What is the Vedanta? Vedanta is the end of the Veda. It is the corpus of all of those Upanishads. Remember the Isha Upanishad, who says there is one reality manifested in all this universe. Universe moving inside of universe. So this unique self alone exists. Knowledge means realizing that self. It proceeds, this path of knowledge, by the method of intellectual reflection, vichara, to right discrimination, viveka. It observes and distinguishes the different elements of our apparent or phenomenal being, and rejecting identification with each of them, arrives at their exclusion and separation in one common term as constituents of Prakriti, of phenomenal nature, creations of Maya, the phenomenal consciousness. So, it is able to arrive at its right identification with the pure and unique self, which is not mutable or perishable, not determinable by any phenomenon or combination of phenomena. From this point, the path, as ordinarily followed, leads to the rejection of the phenomenal worlds from the consciousness as an illusion, and the final emergence without return of the individual soul in the Supreme. So the path of knowledge in the Gita would be chapters 2, and then basically chapters 5 through 11, all the way up until, frankly, it re-embraces the universe, which we'll get to in the next paragraph. But this idea that we look at nature and see even our thoughts and emotions and our bodily sensations as being different from us essentially goes all the way back to the great sage Kapila. Later, the Sankhya school, which permeates all of Indian philosophy and even Sri Aurobindo's terminology, arises from this principal recognition that one is not that. That as you sit, you can look at your body in meditation and say, I have this body, but I am not this body. You can look at your emotions and discover that I have these emotions, I experience them, but I am not these emotions. I have these thoughts in my mind. I have these preferences, but they are not me. I can look at mind, life, and body as separate from me, and if I absorb myself into that experience of consciousness, then I leave all this outside, and it does not touch me anymore. Well, that is the kind of liberation that one moves into, and one can move as a conscious drop and enter into the conscious ocean and disappear into it. No question, it has been affirmed by spiritual aspirants and those who have attained spiritual realization over millenniums that this is a possible and a proven path to release from ignorance. He continues, but this exclusive consummation is not the sole or inevitable result of the path of knowledge, for followed more largely and with a less individual aim, the method of knowledge may lead to an active conquest of the cosmic existence for the divine, no less than to a transcendence. So conquer the universe for that. Isha Upanishad, Mundaka Upanishad. The point of this departure is the realization of the Supreme Self, not only in one's own being, but in all beings. And finally, the realization of even the phenomenal aspects of the world as a play of the divine consciousness, and not something entirely alien to its nature. And on the basis of this realization, a yet further enlargement is possible. The conversion of all forms of knowledge, however mundane, into activities of the divine consciousness, utilizable for the perception of the one and unique object of knowledge, both in itself and through the play of its forms and symbols. So this is a reintegration, claiming every aspect of human awareness, whatever you know, gets its real fulfillment when integrated back into the essential consciousness of the self. Then whatever branch of knowledge, aparavidya, may be there, becomes an aspect folded into the paravidya, the great knowledge. Such a method might well lead to the elevation of the whole range of human intellect and perception to the divine level, to its spiritualization, and to the justification of the cosmic travail of knowledge in humanity. The path of devotion aims at the enjoyment of the supreme love and bliss and utilizes normally the conception of the Supreme Lord in his personality as the divine lover and enjoyer of the universe. So if typically the release from ego plunges you into the impersonality of an absolute existence at the height of mental perfection, here, when we get to the path of devotion, one plunges into the depths of the divine person, the supreme person, Purushottama. The world is then realized as a play of the Lord, with our human life as its final stage, pursued through the different phases of self-concealment and self-revelation. And this the Gita chalks out, especially in chapters 12 and again in 18. The principle of bhakti yoga is to utilize all the normal relations of human life into which emotion enters and apply them no longer to transient worldly relations, but to the joy of the all-loving, the all-beautiful, and the all-blissful. And let's remember that bhakti yoga typically is translated in English as the yoga of devotion. Bhakti comes from the root bhaj, which means to attach oneself to. So that attachment comes most felicitously, most naturally through the heart, but can be expressed through the mind. So there can be a mental attachment to the divine. There can be an attachment consigned through the conduct of works to the divine. So bhakti is not only an emotional experience. It is that which leads you into communion with that person. Worship and meditation are used only for the preparation and increase of intensity of the divine relationship. And this yoga is Catholic in its use of all emotional relations, so that even enmity and opposition to God, considered as an intense, impatient, and perverse form of love, is conceived as a possible means of realization and salvation. Now you'll remember the line from Savitri which recalls that to you. And the demons wept with joy. But so too, when you read the Puranic mythology, sometimes the Asuras, the anti-divine forces, don't want to go through all the long trouble of having to practice yoga to realize God. No, we'll meet you on the field and we'll wrestle with you, and you'll have to conquer me with your love and your superior consciousness and subdue me. And in subduing me, I will become one with you. This path, too, as ordinarily practiced, leads away from world existence to an absorption of another kind than the monists in the transcendent and supracosmic. So still, this practice of bhakti yoga aims at a beatific heaven beyond. It takes us out of the world, supracosmic, beyond the cosmos, beyond the universe. So what about the universe? But here too, the exclusive result is not inevitable. The yoga itself provides a first corrective by not confining the play of divine love to the relation between the supreme soul and the individual, but extending it to a common feeling and mutual worship between the devotees themselves, united in the same realization of the supreme love and bliss. And again, you get that expression of the fans of the peacocks, who, when they're spread, have all the feathers with all their eyes engaging in looking at each other and seeing the all in the one, and the all in the each, and the each in all, and the each in the one. And therefore, realizing utmost harmony, utmost felicity, the one, but multiplied, as Sri Aurobindo says in The Life Divine, multiplied endlessly. It provides a yet more general corrective in the realization of the divine object of love in all beings, not only human, but animal, easily extended to all forms whatsoever. We can see how this larger application of the yoga of devotion may be so used as to lead to the elevation of the whole range of human emotion, sensation, and aesthetic perception to the divine level, its spiritualization, and the justification of the cosmic labor towards love and joy in our humanity. Well, Sri Aurobindo is writing this in 1914, and a few years later, when Meera Richard joins him and is announced as the mother, and they form this collective enterprise called the Sri Aurobindo Ashram, it's to found in human life, in material earthly life, the wonder of this rhapsody, to live it out so that soul awakening sees other soul awakening, sees their unity with the pioneers leading them towards the supramental possibility, sees all the fellow creatures in the same way. Sri Aurobindo writes tenderly about the nature of the fur-footed Brahman in his poem Despair on the Staircase. We've spoken before how the animal life that entered into the household of Mother and Sri Aurobindo were regarded as fellow citizens, how the cats would sit in meditation, drinking in as much of this conscious force as they were capable of containing. That the mother kitten, rather than hiding her kittens away somewhere, carried them one at a time and placed them at the feet of Sri Aurobindo, who sat there, receiving them gladly, who looked at their dogs and recognized that here, even in the kingdom of the hound, there was great intelligence. The dog could reason and work things out and figure out how it was that a door could be locked and opened and gone inside to get the thing that he wanted to do. Most, to be able to be near, to be a companion to the divine. All of these beings, all of these people, working in wondrous harmony with each other. And Mother and Sri Aurobindo installing in each consciousness and joy, all fused together in love. And the place still resonates with it, doesn't it? The path of works, and here if we look at the Gita, that would be especially chapters 3 and 4. The path of works aims at the dedication of every human activity to the Supreme Will. It begins by the renunciation of all egoistic aim for our works, all pursuit of action for an interested aim, or for the sake of a worldly result. By this renunciation, it so purifies the mind and the will that we become easily conscious of the great universal energy as the true doer of all our actions, and the Lord of that energy as their ruler and director, with the individual as only a mask, an excuse, an instrument, or, more positively, a conscious center of action and phenomenal relation. Yes, the individual is real and is a conscious center of universal being expressing transcendence. The choice and direction of the act is more and more consciously left to this supreme will and this universal energy. To that, our works, as well as the results of our works, are finally abandoned. The object is the release of the soul from its bondage to appearances and to the reaction of phenomenal activities. Karma yoga is used, like the other paths, to lead to liberation from phenomenal existence and a departure into the Supreme. But here, too, the exclusive result is not inevitable. Excluding the world is not inevitable. The end of the path may be equally a perception of the divine in all energies, in all happenings, in all activities, and a free and unegoistic participation of the soul in the cosmic action. So followed, it will lead to the elevation of all human will and activity to the divine level, its spiritualization, and the justification of the cosmic labor towards freedom, power, and perfection in the human being. So we see here the ascent of the offering, of the sacrifice. This is the commerce implicit in the ascent and descent of yoga. We can see also that in the integral view of things, these three paths are one. Divine love should normally lead to the perfect knowledge of the beloved by perfect intimacy, thus becoming a path of knowledge. And to divine service, thus becoming a path of works. So also should perfect knowledge lead to perfect love and joy, and a full acceptance of the works of that which is known. Dedicated works to the entire love of the Master of the sacrifice and the deepest knowledge of his ways and his being It is in this triple path that we come most readily to the absolute knowledge, love, and service of the one in all beings and in the entire cosmic manifestation. So this would be touched upon in the Bhagavad Gita in the 18th chapter, in the 57th verse, which fairly sums it all up. Devoting all yourself to me, giving up in your conscious mind all your actions into me, resorting to buddhi yoga, the yoga of the intelligent will, be always one in heart and consciousness with me. Cetasa sarva karmani mayi sannyasa matpara buddhi yogam upashritya machittaha satatam bhava. Beautiful. We will take up the next chapter next week, but I think some of you know that we read Savitri in the evenings after our afternoon meditation. We read a couple of pages of Savitri every day. Yesterday we began Book 3, Canto 2, The Adoration of the Divine Mothers. Pardon me, The Adoration of the Divine Mother. Will I be permitted to go on? Let's see. I thought we'd read it tonight. This is on page 310, Canto 2. A stillness, absolute, incommunicable, meets the sheer self-discovery of the soul. A wall of stillness shuts it from the world. A gulf of stillness swallows up the sense and makes unreal all that mind has known, all that the laboring senses still would weave, prolonging an imaged unreality. Self's vast spiritual silence occupies space. Only the inconceivable is left, only the nameless without space and time. Abolished is the burdening need of life. Thought falls from us. We cease from joy and grief. The ego is dead. We are freed from being and care. We have done with birth and death and work and fate. O soul, it is too early to rejoice. Thou hast reached the boundless silence of the self. Thou hast leaped into a glad divine abyss. But where hast thou thrown self's mission and self's power? On what dead bank on the Eternal's road? One was within thee who was self and world. What hast thou done for his purpose in the stars? Escape brings not the victory and the crown. Something thou camest to do from the unknown, but nothing is finished, and the world goes on, because only half God's cosmic work is done. Only the everlasting No has neared, and stared into thy eyes, and killed thy heart. But where is the lover's everlasting Yes? And immortality in the secret heart, the voice that chants to the Creator fire, the symboled Om, the great assenting word, the bridge between the rapture and the calm, the passion and the beauty of the bride, the chamber where the glorious enemies kiss, the smile that saves, the golden peak of things. This too is truth at the mystic fount of life. A black veil has been lifted. We have seen the mighty shadow of the omniscient Lord. But who has lifted up the veil of light, and who has seen the body of the King? The mystery of God's birth and acts remains, leaving unbroken the last chapter's seal, unsolved the riddle of the unfinished play. The cosmic player laughs within his mask, and still the last inviolate secret hides behind the human glory of a form, behind the gold eidolon of a name. A large white line has figured as a goal, but far beyond the ineffable sun tracks blaze. What seemed the source and end was a wide gate, a last bare step into eternity. An eye has opened upon timelessness. Infinity takes back the forms it gave, and through God's darkness, or his naked light, his million rays return into the sun. There is a zero sign of the Supreme. Nature left nude and still uncovers God. But in her grandiose nothingness, all is there. When her strong garbs are torn away from us, the soul's ignorance is slain, but not the soul. The zero covers an immortal face. A high and blank negation is not all. A huge extinction is not God's last word. Life's ultimate sense, the close of being's course, the meaning of this great mysterious world. In absolute silence sleeps an absolute power. Awaking, it can wake the trance-bound soul, and in the ray reveal the parent sun. It can make the world a vessel of Spirit's force. It can fashion in the clay God's perfect shape. To free the self is but one radiant pace. Here to fulfill himself was God's desire. Namaste. Jai Ma. And we are in this passage in the Book of the Divine Mother, and February is her month, and it belongs to a few others too.